Welcome to the Ketodontist podcast with your host, Dr. Matt. We're here to explore the worlds of low-carb and ketogenic diets, primal and paleo lifestyles, and oral and whole-body health. We're taking the best information from the leading minds in health and wellness and making those worlds collide. This is the Ketodontist podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Ketodontist podcast. This is your host, Dr. Matthew Standridge. I'm a licensed and practicing dentist here in Yates Center, Kansas, the hay capital of the world. And I'm also a primal health coach and certified personal trainer. And over the last few years, I have adopted a keto, paleo, primal lifestyle. And over that course, I've lost about 90 pounds, almost to the 100-pound mark. And also, not only have I resolved a lot of health issues, inflammatory issues, better cognition, but once my wife adopted this way of life, she started losing weight and feeling better as well. And then we are also trying to raise our daughter Hazel kind of up in this ancestral health type template. And then, like I said, I'm also a health coach. I do private coaching. I'm also a coach for the Keto Gains boot camps. Love those guys. Started out as a lurker on their page and then joined in a boot camp, then multiple boot camps, and now I help coach for them. So really, this podcast is about keto. It's about primal paleo lifestyles, low carb in general. I do also talk about dental stuff and its connection to all this stuff. So if you're kind of into that Weston A. Price style, you might enjoy this as well. And really we're talking about, my big focus is on the diabetes stuff, because obesity and diabetes related illnesses are set to bankrupt this country in 2030. And for myself, battling obesity, being pre-diabetic, diabetes runs in my family, heart disease runs in my family, I felt compelled to share this information with people in order to really get the message out there about healthy, low-carb nutrition and lifestyle. So if you're new to this show, I welcome you. Thanks for being here. If you like today's show, feel free to go back. I've had some amazing guests on here, and I'm lining up even more for 2020. So there's tons of good information that I wish I would have had starting out, listening to Marty Kendall and Ted Naiman and Luis Villaseñor, Amy Berger, Tyler Cartwright, Rob Wolf. I've had some amazing people on here that I feel truly blessed that I've had the opportunity to talk to. And I'm, like I said, I'm lining up some more for 2020. So if you enjoyed the show, go back, listen to previous episodes. If you like anything, please share, because in this age of this fake influencer IG abs world, there's a lot of misinformation being spread out, and just because somebody has abs, they can claim something and people will just eat it up, even though it's entirely false, or they're basically doing it to sell something. And so I'm about real advice, evidence-based advice where applicable, to get people to where they need to be and in a realistic fashion. Not biohacking, none of these kind of buzzwords of the day, but real evidence-based practices to give you real results. So that's what this is about. If you've been following this whole CrossFit thing lately, they've had a few huge wins that I really want to talk about today. Now, if you know my work here, I'm not a CrossFit guy. I've joined in some workouts in a few boxes. There's some places I like to visit if I'm traveling, but the nearest box to me is 40 miles away, so I don't have the time to go and make that a regular part of my fitness routine. That's why I have a garage gym. You see me on the treadmill disc. If you're watching this, I've had my pre-workout, shooting this podcast, and then I'm going to go lift for a couple hours. So I'm not a CrossFit guy, but I do respect what they're doing. Some people have qualms against CrossFit because they say it's quote unquote unsafe. because it's higher intensity or whatever. But here's the thing with that. It really comes down to the coaches, the trainers, and the boxes and how they're managed. And just like everything in life, you're going to have A-level, B-level, C-level players, okay? You see that in sports. You see that in professions. I see it in dentistry. You have A-level, B-level, C-level dentists. See it in doctors and generals and surgeons. You see it with plumbers and electricians too. You see it all across the board. So CrossFit isn't going to be exempt from that. So really it comes down to the quality of the coaching, the ability to scale properly and all that stuff. But CrossFit as a whole, I have respect for, and I have a respect for what Glassman has done over the last 10 years. And then lately, there's been two big, huge court wins that CrossFit has had that I just don't think it's been getting enough attention. Nobody's been talking about these. I've only seen them mentioned in passing. If I had seen those, I would have easily not even known about what's been going on. And it's just been within the last couple of weeks. And yet, this is type of stuff that should be covered in the media. People should be talking about it on their blogs and their podcasts. And yet, nobody has been talking about this stuff. So here I am, and I'm really wanting to distill some of the information over their last couple court cases and their wins, but then kind of going back and unpacking the history behind it. So it started off with a report that I saw on November 22nd talking about how that CrossFit had settled their suit against the HHS, which is the Health and Human Services. And so that's big, and I'll tell you why here in just a minute. And then on December 4th, so just a couple weeks later, not even 2 weeks later, a judge ruled in favor of CrossFit against the NSCA, which is the National Strength and Conditioning Association, if I'm remembering that right off the top of my head. So I'll come back to that in a little bit because that has even further back ties. So it's really interesting, the political game that's been going on the last few years. So to start off with the HHS thing. So back in 2018, it was reported that CrossFit had filed suit against two foundations with government ties, basically to have them release information about the donors. And they thought that information would expose conflicts of interest, so including some ties with some big soda companies that give money to these foundations that also, it turns out, gave money to fitness groups that had been at war with CrossFit over the last few years. So really, this all goes back to this whole exercise is medicine movement that happened a few years ago with the NSCA, and we'll be coming back to that in a bit. So the lawsuit was filed under the Freedom of Information Act, and it accused the CDC Foundation and the NIH Foundation. So CDC being Centers for Disease Control, NIH being National Institutes of Health. So it filed suit against these two foundations for being, quote unquote, ethical scandals by accepting donations from these companies and these manufacturers that have basically directly contributed to obesity, type 2 diabetes, all these chronic illnesses, and even like some drug manufacturers, for like the opioid crisis and stuff like that. So it turned out that the foundations fell outside of the government, but they help to raise money for research for the NIH and the CDC. Okay, so it's kind of funny because though CrossFit was looking at this thing in a wide range of things, they were really focusing on the soda industry because for several years now, they've been pushing against soda industry's involvement in the medical research because fitness competitors competitors of CrossFit were getting money from Big Soda and were challenging CrossFit's ways, and basically were lobbying to regulate them out of business. Okay, so Glassman, the CEO, the founder of CrossFit, right? He argued that the competitors, the fitness competitors, were working to discredit CrossFit's methods, which were, as we know, kind of unorthodox, high intense. And they were saying that because CrossFit was a big competitor and were bringing competition to the marketplace. And so one of the ways that they were trying to do that was and he was talking about Big Soda raising money and getting their fingers into the research. And so they were trying to basically regulate him out of business. So on the 2018 suit, the CrossFit spokesman said that they weren't going after Soda exclusively for this lawsuit. They were bringing up the fact that the foundations were breaking the law. They were breaking the law by not listing donors and the specific amounts that they received. So things that were being brought in and they knew they were coming from were being labeled anonymous. So under the government rules, the foundations were supposed to create a barrier, right, between where the money was coming from and the researchers. So they couldn't provide information about their donors and so to researchers because they didn't want it affecting the quality of research. Which sounds all well and good, but I'm telling you that does not happen in the real world, just to let you know. So CrossFit said that requested donation reports, but that the foundations did not provide them. So that then pushed their hand to file suit. And they were quoted of saying that they accused the organizations of, quote, opaque conflicts of interest at agencies that Americans rely on for information critical to their health, end quote. So they said that they failed to comply with their legal transparency requirements. And so they're taking money from opioid manufacturers, from soda companies, from junk food manufacturers, and all that stuff. And that creates a conflict of interest between these institutions and the general public health. Now, it should be noted that this lawsuit comes after a big study that was being conducted through the NIH was canceled, and the study was being done on health effects of moderate drinking. And it received like $60 million in funding from the alcohol industry. So here you have a study on the effects of moderate drinking, and they're getting $60 million from the alcohol industry, yet we're supposed to believe that that's not going to influence the research at all, right? But an investigation by the New York Times suggested researchers had hinted to the industry that there would be a possible favorable outcome. So then the scientists deny, any correspondence, right, between that any communication happened there. But because it created this hint of doubt, this study was then canceled after that expose. So it's kind of funny because Glassman, he started this whole thing back in 2014 when CrossFit sued the NSCA over a study that they had published that were claiming that the participants of CrossFit, that many of the participants of CrossFit quit after they were injured. Well, then it turns out that the NSCA was receiving money from PepsiCo, or receiving money from Gatorade, which is owned by PepsiCo. The association issued a correction, and then their lead researcher resigned. But still, the suit was ongoing, and we'll get back to that in a minute. So then in another instance, the American College of Sports Medicine had gotten sponsorship from Gatorade and Coca-Cola and was pushing for legislation that would require certain fitness trainers to receive license only through their program. So that's the exercises, movement, push. I think I misquoted that earlier, saying that that was the NSCA, which actually was the ACSM, the American College of Sports Medicine. So this battle has been going on since, 2014? Something like that. After all that, going back to this CDC and NIH. So it was decided that the CDC and NIH were exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. So then CrossFit basically ran it up the chain and filed suit with the Department of Health and Human Services, so the HHS, and to compel them to comply with, have these foundations comply with the Freedom of Information Act request and release donors via internal communications. Well, so the CDC released these internal communications in the form of emails, but there is a lot of damning stuff in there. There's a lot of incriminating and very embarrassing emails. So after the HHS realized this, the HHS attorneys tried to retroactively redact these emails, claiming something about, I think it was attorney-client privilege applied to these conversations. So CrossFit challenged this redaction and the reason for it. So then the HHS backed down, no longer contest the release of these emails. And so with that, one of the CDC emails had an official in charge, their official in charge of public-private partnerships, stating that she wondered whether the CDC's affiliate nonprofit could quote-unquote skate by on its transparency reports by lumping all the contributions together and not line iteming them out as the law requires. So here you have an official of the CDC asking if they can skate this under the rug. And so you can tell that this creates a massive conflict of interest, right? Now, here's the thing. So conflicts of interest are endemic in politics and medical research and all that stuff. And these emails really show, I mean, they're evidence showing that the CDC is taking priority of industry relationships over public knowledge and public health. So with the release of these emails, the suit is being settled. And this was reported on November 26th. So again, huge win for CrossFit, right? Well, then right again on the heels of that, on December 4th, Judge Janice Sammartino, I don't know if I'm saying that right, was the judge overseeing the suit against CrossFit and the NSCA. So they've been going at this for the last 5 years or something like that. Well, that judge awarded nearly $4 million to CrossFit in the form of attorney fees and also granted any sanctions to be terminated. So in this thing, both sides have spent a lot of money. NSCA has spent a lot of money in their legal battles with CrossFit, and there is really nothing good here for the NSCA. I mean, at this point, they're in hot water financially. And so I'm going to bring up a quote here from the judge saying, in 25 years on the bench, this is the first case that the court has ever had that has gotten to this point. Having carefully considered the record, the severity and frequency of the defendant's bad faith misconduct is as egregious as anything this court has ever seen or read in any of the cases. So I don't know how the NSCA is going to really bounce back from this. I mean, they have been publicly whipped. I mean, they're set facing in the corner right now with a bruised backside. Man, but huge win for CrossFit. I got to give them respect for sticking it out there and really being one of the only sole organizations, private organizations, that are taking it to these political foundations and fighting for transparency, especially when it comes to these big soda, these food manufacturers, these drug manufacturers, and how they have their fingers intertwined in the policies and the research that drive public health. Because, folks, we've been lied to. We've been lied to about so many things. Lied to about the food pyramid. We were lied to about sugar. We were lied to about tobacco, right? I mean, we were lied to about fat. That fat is this evil and cholesterol is this devil and everybody needs to be on statins. We have been lied to, and it's so good to see an organization like CrossFit sticking up to these big manufacturers and getting some wins under their belts. We need more of this, and we need to be talking about this. Even if you don't like CrossFit, we still need to be giving props to them, right? Because they're doing some important work. I don't care if you don't think their programming and their workouts or the way they do things is optimal. That is irrelevant to me. This could be some association of runners. If they did this, I would be thrilled. Like, it has nothing to do with CrossFit itself to me. It's about what the organization stands for and how they're really fighting. It's a real kind of David and Goliath situation, and they're really putting themselves out there, putting their own money and butt on the lines, and for them to come out victorious against this kind of corruption and scandals is really good to see. So I hope you share this show. I hope you really put this out there, because we need to be talking about this. We need to let Congress know that we're watching this. We need to be pushing for more transparency in this realm, because it's through this falsified data, these big corporation-led research that has swayed the public health policies that has kind of led us to where we are, and that's fat, sick, diabetic, and going to be broke here in about another 10, 20 years. And so now is the time, if we don't want to further suffer our own health to further suffer, or we don't want the entire economy to collapse around diabetes-related illnesses, let alone even more chronic illnesses, inflammatory issues after that, Alzheimer's and that type of things, neurodegenerative diseases. We need to be talking about it, and we need to be taking action now. So CrossFit, Barry Glassman, I give kudos to you for what you're doing. Keep up the good fight. And for everybody else, we need to get on the front lines too. We need to be supporting this. We need to be shouting this from the rooftop, because things have got to change. So that's it for today. Podcast, I'm going to be getting back to paleo versus keto diets, and why one would consider the other, and why they might not be as different as one would think. So there is a way to Venn diagram this and have a middle ground to get optimization of both as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about next, and some studies to back those up. Until then, you guys take care. Have a good one. Go lift. Go smile. Brush, floss. I'll talk to you later. Bye.